The issues around policies and also helping you make day-to-day activities, of course, rest on the shoulders of private individuals and, of course, governmental officials and stakeholders that are involved. But the issue to help you make informed decisions with the headlines rests on this table. It's our way of welcoming you to the headline reviews here on Afro Connect TV. I am Godwin Sunday, and I am with
Adewale Olashokwan. It's nice to be here this morning.
Yeah, Wale, so good to be here today, and we're doing this together. And it's the Eid Mubarak or Salah, Barakat de Salah.
Exactly, Barakat de Salah to all Nigerians across the world and to all Muslims in the world. It's a good day of celebration, 30 days of fasting for Muslims around the world, and we should always need to remember the essence of the Ramadan itself, the fasting, the zakah, the prayer, and the essence of our spirituality. And I think we've achieved that for the past 30 days. So now it's time to marry and to enjoy the Salaram.
Well, I like that part of the marry, so I'm expecting my Ram after the end of the show today.
Exactly.
All right, speaking of Salah celebration, our correspondent, Iheanacho Onye, was on the field earlier today to join Muslim Faithful on the field, and she joins us with this report. Enjoy the report. Well, we say amen to all the prayers that has been made there even on the Eid ground. I ought to say amen to that one.
Exactly, it's a mood of gratitude and celebration, and we couldn't be happier that as a nation we're finding time to celebrate the month of Ramadan. As we've stated, it's a very crucial month in the Islamic calendar, and anyone that has practice in the Islamic faith must adhere to the principle of it. And it has come highly anticipated. Now it's gone, and we couldn't just more but be happier and appreciate that we lived to see another, and we're waiting to live to see another Ramadan next year, inshallah.
Inshallah, Wale. All right, so let's get into the business of the day. What do we have from this day newspaper?
Exactly, we're starting the conversation this morning with this day newspaper. The CBN allocates forex to bureau the change at 1,101 naira to a dollar. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, on Monday announced the sale of foreign exchange to bureau de change operators at 1,100 naira to a dollar. The CBN stated this in a circular addressed to the operators, adding that the sum of $10,000 would be sold to each bureau de change at below market rate. The central bank also mandated the Bureau de Change to sell the dollar to eligible customers at a rate not exceeding 1.5% above the purchase price. This suggests Bureau de Change are not expected to sell above 1,117 naira to a dollar. The naira traded at 1,251 naira to a dollar on the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market over the weekend. Godwin, I think this is a step in the right direction. Gone are the days when we see a huge gap between the official market rate and the parallel market rate. And a lot of Nigerians have talked about that this is a means of corruption in the country. We see perhaps people from the Central Bank of Nigeria selling to different politicians or to different important people in the public, and then they go to the parallel markets, to the black markets to sell it and mop up the money to be able to gain from the country, benefit from the people's wealth. But I think this is a step in the right direction. We've seen different investments that Nigeria has made and different intervention, I should say, that Cardoso, the central bank governor, has made since he became the governor of the central bank. He was able to clear the forex backlog with foreign airlines and different organizations that Nigeria was owing money. That alone was able to reinforce people's and investors, international investors' confidence in our economy as a country. But now seeing that Naira is trading at 1,100, it shouldn't be sold for more than 1,170 Naira at the Bureau de Change operators in Nigeria. I think it's a good thing, because a lot of Nigerians were saying that perhaps in the next 6 months, when President Tinubu came in, we were going to be selling at 2,000 Naira
that was the prediction.
to a dollar. But now we're seeing that a lot of interventions are being put in place, and the Naira is actually gaining and strengthening as against the dollar. But there's still some people in their own world that would say that the Naira is being backed, or is being backed with a foreign reserve. It's been mopped up with these different interventions that are artificial. But we must see things holistically to understand that the interventions that have been put in place has been timely, has been effective, and we can only be optimistic and expect the best out of this. We've seen different, what's it called, reshuffle in the central bank. We've seen the central bank governor sack some directors. We've seen a lot of things being put in place. And I think this says a lot about how much the economy of the country is of utmost importance to the presidency.
Yeah, it is, Wale. I can't agree less with you at this point. But then we are looking at also the formalization and informalization of the BDC, which is the Bureau de Change. How formal has the Bureau de Change become right now? Is the CBN answerable to the Bureau de Change? And as the Bureau de Change grows so strong that they now begin to influence the central bank policy when that's to do? Because right now what we see when we get to commercial banks, most people cannot even afford the dollars from the commercial banks. We buy these dollars directly from the BDCs. So we're not asking, are we institutionalizing the BDCs right now? If yes, what is the organogram? What are the documentational frameworks that we use as a modality, as a yardstick, to be able to determine the operational dimensions of the BDCs? Now, this will help also to shaping our policy making in terms of formulating of laws that can be regulating or that can regulate the BDC. Because if we're saying that we're reducing this to the BDC, we now ask, right now this circular is to the BDC. What about the secular to the what they call it, the commercial banks who are operating on the parallel not operating on the parallel markets? We're not asking salient questions as this so that we can get answers. You see, Central Bank of Nigeria should, as a matter of all importance, talk to Nigerians and let us know what the structure of the BDC, what does it stand for? Do they have a president? Do they have an institution somewhere? Do they have an headquarter? And how does this policy, how do they ensure that the policy being put in place from the upper echelon drives the organogram of this policy is being following the Max Weber theory of chain of command? How do they ensure that the chain of command or the chain of instructional command gets to the from the zenith through to the bottom layers of this policy implementation? These are questions that are highly begging for answers.
Exactly, these are valid questions that you've raised, that we must in fact know how policies, different things that laws that were put in place, I should put it in simpler terms, are being implemented to the letter. And you mentioned the commercial banks as well. Does this apply to them? How are they able to buy and sell a dollar as against the naira? I think it's a good question. And I think the central bank itself is doing all it can to make sure that the naira is stable. A lot of people have their own opinion about the floating of the currency, but this, we can see that this is a monitored flotation of the naira, and it says a lot about what we are doing as a country, what we are achieving. Gone are the days when we just back our currencies and it's not strengthened. We can't even compete with our neighboring countries, and now we see that this is a currency that is stable. Investors can come into the country knowing that they're not going to get a higher value for their money or the lowest value for their money at the shortest possible time. The stability itself, I think, is what must be commended at this certain time.
Yeah,
but
we
also
must
look
commend
at the intervention that the Central Bank of Nigeria through the EFCC was at this table. We mentioned what the EFCC is doing to curb the use of dollarization of naira, dollarization of our economy, I beg your pardon, in Nigeria. We see different schools or different institutions collecting payment in dollars. That has to stop, and I think those are the measures that are being put in place. But we can't just do nothing but be optimistic for our country and see how it leads up to that.
As usual, you need to be optimistic about
Exactly.
Nigeria. But let's move on to the Punch newspaper, where the Kogi State government have come out to say that there is no Lassa fever in Kogi State. Well, the Punch has it that the Kogi State government has said there is no outbreak of Lassa fever across the 21 local governments of the state. The State Commissioner for Health, Dr. Abdulaziz Adeza, while reacting to a viral video of an alleged Lassa fever outbreak in the state on Tuesday, noted that a student who was admitted to the Federal Teaching Hospital, Lokoja, did not die of Lassa fever. He explained that the student presented complaints of fever and bleeding from the gum. He added that the patient was being investigated and managed while samples were taken and sent to the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, Abuja. But unfortunately, before the result was released, he died. The commissioner said the result came out to be negative for Lassa fever. Now, one of these another interesting issues that I begin to ask again. If we have medical records in this country, Kogi State, this is the second time they're saying that there is no Lassa fever. The first time Kogi State spoke, they said there is no COVID-19 in Kogi, and that was the former governor, Yaya Bello, that was in 2020, said there was no COVID-19, while other states were declaring openly that there was COVID-19, and the numbers kept going up. Well, Yaya Bello came out and said, no, there is no COVID-19 in my state, and that worked. Now we're seeing a case of Lassa fever. Kogi State again is saying there is no Lassa fever in Kogi State. That's from the Minister of Health. But then again, we are asking, questions that are begging for answers are, firstly, who breaks the news that the student died? Who monitored the results to the point where it got to Abuja, and Abuja was able to give a feedback mechanism at that point? Now, these are questions we need to ask, because if we are saying that there's a leak in the health report of private individuals, then it calls for concern, because anybody can use this at the detriment of people if not well managed. So I want to advise the Kogi State government, just before we take up the next story, at this point in time, the Kogi State government should pay more attention on the health records, especially of indigents within and around the state of Kogi, so that we can have more efficient and more proficient and effective health care delivery systems in Kogi State. Looking at all this old Lassa fever incident, it can be prevented, it can be avoided, but then let's not walk with smoke. Let's get the actual report, so that investors can be able to marry fact with the figures and also know what the health status of Kogi State is. So I think if the records are straight, this will help in a way.
Exactly, and I think, first of all, there's a lot of things to unpack in this conversation. The information going around on social media, particularly X, about the advent of Lassa fever in Kogi State, it's something that should be worrisome, and it begs for people's concerns and people's worry at this crucial time in the country. Because, number one, this is an infectious disease, and it can be contracted through contact. with people, and that's the reason people were very concerned about the spread of it, or perhaps even if it was in existence as it were reported on social media. But that aside, of course, the essence of information sharing is quite important, that we do not go into a state of panic and have people doing things that are not legalized or things that are not sanctioned by the necessary authorities. But that on one side. And another side that people are asking questions is that this is an infectious disease control, and Nigeria has had its fair share, starting from the issue of course, we talked about coronavirus, we talked about what's it called, the other disease that Stella Adadevoh was able to, Ebola in 2014, when Stella Adadevoh was able to swing into action and make sure that Nigeria was saved compared to other countries are low. We had the lowest rate in numbers of people infected and people dying from that infectious disease.
Remember using salt water to bath.
Exactly, people were using salt water to bath, and I'm sure a lot of people would have taken different measures, as that was reported in Kogi as well. But also, another question that we must ask is how this level of our preparedness for outbreaks such as these. The world was thrown off balance during the COVID-19 era. The whole world, at one time, it wasn't recognized as a pandemic. At one time, they said it wasn't, you couldn't spread it by contact and all of that. But that was later debunked, and we see how it metamorphosed into different kind of things and how it's dealt with the economy, particularly the global economy is still trying to recover from the shockwave of COVID-19. So those are the things that we must be able to put in place. During Ebola period, we saw what happened, and then during COVID-19, people were asking infectious disease control and isolation centers in Lagos State. We saw how the bush was almost covering the infectious disease center in the state. And so a lot of people are asking what allocations must be made to make sure that the health is prioritized. Health is prioritized in Nigeria. Should we have cases such as this? Are we prepared to face it economically? Are we prepared to face it as regards to taking care of people in different because people have to be isolated when this happens. So those are the measures that I think we should put in place. And I think the government has done it right to come out to inform the people that there's no need for panic. There's no need for you to start having your bath with salt, I should say. And giving those health tips is very important. And I think health information must be rolled out at this time.
Sanctions must also be melted on whoever got those informations leaked. I like sanctions.
I think that itself must be put in place.
So let's move on to the Daily
Independence. Ganduje, wife, and others to appear in court on April 17th. Bearing last-minute change, the national chairman, All Progressive Congress, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, his wife, Professor Hafsat Ganduje, and 6 others are to be arraigned at the Kano High Court on April 17, 2024. A summons signed, I beg your pardon, by Daily Independent on Tuesday. The former 2-term governor of Kano State and 7 others are to be arraigned on 8-count charges concerning dollar bribery allegation, diversion, and misappropriation of funds that include alleged $413,000 and 1.38 billion naira bribery, among others. Kano State government, in the criminal suit filed against the 8 respondents, said it has assembled 15 witnesses. The matter fixed for 17th of April 2024 is before Justice Usman Malam Naab of State High Court number 4. I remember vividly, it was at this table you mentioned that how can we begin to put measures in place to ensure that accountability is achieved even while these governors are in office. We shouldn't wait for perhaps 4 years or 8 years of the administration before we begin to gather evidences together. But other people will talk about the autonomy that the governors enjoy.
As enshrined in the Constitution.
As enshrined in the Constitution, they enjoy as the chief security officer and as the chief executive officer of their state. But I think now that we've seen that these allegations have been brought before the judge at the court, we can only allow for the law to take its course. We've seen a lot of videos online circulating allegations, we should call it now, of the former governor Ganduje, what he was doing with dollar, the video clip that went viral at the time while he was still in government.
Almost changed his name to Gandula.
while it was changed to Gandola. But that we cannot declare right now if that was doctored or that itself was a fact that happened. That has to be determined by the court. But I think the step that the state government has taken as well is a step in right direction, that we're bringing up witnesses to the justice to make sure that we're not in support, we're not covering for it. Of course, they're not in the same political party. And All Progressive Congress has also come out to lambast the governor to tell him that this matter is under the jurisdiction of the federal government and not the state government. But I think everybody can be a party to the case in court, and the All Progressive Congress should allow, if we believe that Ganduje has a clean slate and he has performed excellently well without any form of bribery or corruption during his term as governor, then you must allow anybody that wants to join, be a party to the case in court, to allow them to do that with all form of sincerity and openness and open, adjudication at the court. And I'm sure the governor is a big man, he would get a fair hearing at the court. But the conversation continues to remain that how are we making sure that governors are held accountable and people in positions of power are held accountable? Can we have a monitoring scheme, just like you mentioned, while they're in office, financial AFCC? I think they must have heard a lot about the criticism that they're getting from you about how much they go after people after they've gone out of the office. But the conversation remains that while they're in office, the state coffers must be protected. People's wealth, because it's the people's commonwealth, must be spent accordingly to benefit all and sundry.
While looking at the figure of 1.38
billion
billion
naira and 413 million.
I don't want to mention the dollars yet. I don't want to mention the dollar. That's about $413.
$13,000.
We're looking at $13,000. We're looking at 1.38 billion bribery allegation. Well, that's really...
And it's not the only one there. His wife and other people as well are roped together.
I'm not even looking at the parties that are involved in all of this. I'm looking at first and foremost the billions that are involved in this particular bribery allegation issue. Now, when we look at all of this issue, we come back again and ask ourselves as a nation, how then do we be able to give full accountability when it comes to public office holders? I've often asked this question on this table. Q ipso custodiet, ipso custodis is a legal maxim that says who watches the watchdogs. So when you have an exclusive legislative list, you have a concurrent list and you have a residual list. On the residual list right now, we have 774 local governments in Nigeria. Most of the local government chairmen cannot be held accountable. We've had 36 state governors, most of them almost a replica of what is happening with 774 local governments across the country. Now, we all focus our attention, which has become like a primary attention to the federal government. And it's worrisome at this point. Are we saying that if this is even a smoke, let's say it's a smoke, is an alleged accusation to the past governor of Kano State. Imagine we're talking about 1.3 billion in Kano State. That's quite huge, Wale. This case must be followed through to ensure that justice is not just served, it's delivered.
Exactly.
I'm interested in this case, Wale. Since your final word was like APC should allow us to join in peace, we can all be parties to the. So I think I'm interested in this case, Wale.
Exactly, and what you just said would strike Nigerians in a very personal way to look at what 1.3 billion naira can do for Kano State, and how we've talked about the number of out-of-school children in Kano State. We talked about the state of economy, state of health as well in Kano State, and what this money can do. Even education in Kano State, what exactly are we doing? Are we moving forward? Is it a step forward and few more steps backward? Is that what we are doing in this country? Because you've made a salient point that most of most people in Nigeria focus has only been at the presidency. What exactly is the president doing? How are they doing? We have state governors to hold accountable. We have our legislators to hold accountable. We have local government chairmen to hold accountable. We have everybody doing one thing or another to make this country go forward, to hold accountable, to make sure that they deliver the right thing for the country. Because if we focused more on the presidency, we don't know what the governors are doing. We don't know what the local government is achieving in their own. It's quite worrisome, and we must begin to ensure that the step in the right direction continues to move forward. We can't move a step forward and 10 steps backward.
Well, viewers at home, just in case you're just joining us, this is still the headline reviews here on Afro Connect TV, and we are trying to help you make informed decision on this table as regard to the headlines, select headlines making the rounds across the country. Well, we'll touch one more story before we call it a wrap, and this story is coming from the Authority newspaper, where the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission has fined the Abuja Electricity Distribution PLC the sum of 200 million naira for failure to comply with the prescribed customer band classifications for the tariff billing. The National Electricity Regulatory Commission said the enforcement action is in non-compliance with the supplementary order to the April 2024 multi-year tariff order 2024 the Abuja Abuja Distribution Company. A statement signed by the NEC management in Abuja at the weekend said that rather applying the new tariff to only Band A customers as specified, the Abuja Distribution Company applied the new tariff to all customers band. Now, what this is, I want to say this might likely be an oversight for the Abuja. Let me give an excuse for them that they are supposed to just charge only Band A users the new tariff. But right now, I think it's an oversight on their part. They've done that. They've been able to charge everybody, both your Band A, Band B, Band C, Band E, Band F, even if you're in Band Y. You know, the Band Y, which I think she not to mention that the other day when she said, but if you don't have constant light, you are in Band Y. You're asking, why don't I have light? But then again, we're looking at this from another perspective, and that is the fact that how much of an oversight can this be? For you to implement a tariff that has not been implemented. It's like you punishing me for not committing a crime. That calls for concern. And looking at it again, I'm not faulting the Abuja Regulatory Commission, the Abuja Distribution Company. I'm looking at the fine that was given to them, the whopping sum of 200 million, and they are still mandated to make a refund by way of token or other tariff. I think there's a way they placed it that it should make supplementary lists for refunds to the customers. And I ask again, if Abuja Abuja Distribution Company is going to be paying the sum of 200 million as fine, where would they get the money from? They'll get the money from customers. Doesn't this spell a potential doom for customers within the Federal Capital Metropolis? Wouldn't this cause a hike also in the price of fuel? Probably the power holdings and distribution company can begin to come up with excuses that can automatically make us to have more absenteeism of the supply and other challenges. I'm looking at this because this fine is high. If we'd say we're fining them for the sum of 50 million, it's okay, it's fair. But 200 million, Wale, that's quite outrageous, Wale.
Well, a lot of people might disagree with you that the fine is not even enough. Because this
but we'll share in the fine.
The bulk of this conversation rests solely on Nigerians. And who are the Nigerians we're talking about? These are the consumers of electricity distribution in the country. The conversation started from when this was hiked. And a lot of people were saying, how will this be implemented? And the federal government told us that it's going to be people on the Band A category that will be charged. And people are then saying, how do you determine people in the Band A category? We're told that people enjoying 20-hour plus electricity supply in a day. And people are asking again, okay, 20-hour plus electricity supply, how do you determine that? And they told us that people that have metered. And we are also asking questions, because Nigeria keeps asking these questions. There are also people that are not metered in the country that are enjoying this, and there are some people that are metered that are not enjoying this. Can you make sure that all consumers in the Band A category are all metered across all levels to make sure that they are not overcharged and they are not their right is not being trampled upon. But now we've seen what Abuja Electricity Distribution Company, I will refrain from calling it an oversight, because if this was losing money out of their businesses, it wouldn't be an oversight. If it was to reduce the prices of electricity in Nigeria, it wouldn't be an oversight. There wouldn't be an oversight.
Let me just call it an oversight.
No, there wouldn't be an oversight in that regard.
Yeah.
But when it comes to charging Nigerians, and consumer protection is a conversation that I think Nigeria has to hold holistically, because a lot of Nigerians are not getting value for their money. Now we've seen people in band A, band B, all the bands, they've been lumped together and they've been charged. They've been charged as disregard to the law that was put in place that only category A can only be charged. And I think an investigation has to happen. We need to understand why did this happen, how the conversation that you answer that if we give them, if they have been fined 200 million, how are they able to meet up with that fine? And will this cost not fall back on the consumers? Those are the questions that needs to be answered, so that you buy something in the market, it is hard for you to criticize it, to make criticism, because you don't know, perhaps the producer might take you to court and all of that. But when we have the government agencies fighting for Nigerians, I think it's strengthen their own resolve to make sure that they speak up when they are being, their rights are being taken for granted.
Well, I think that's a subtle way of saying that's the size of the package for today.
Exactly.
Although I still maintain my stand on the show, you know that's an oversight. Well, viewers, this is how far we can go today on the headline reviews. Remember, you can join us on all our various social media platforms. Should you want to do that, you can join us on AfroConnect on Facebook, X, and also Instagram, and also other social media platforms. Remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Till I come your way again, I am Godwin Sunday. It's bye for now.